Hi, I'm done. Over the past 3 months, I've been trying to make a payment integration with mobile money providers easier for TypeScript devs, and I've been working on an SDK as well as some supporting tools like a dashboard built on top of it. If you want to know more about it, you can check out my last video where I go into more detail. Initially, I didn't have a roadmap, so I would just add new features over time depending on what was needed. And while making my last video, I realized that there was need for structure as I built my projects. And to achieve this structure, I've adapted GitHub projects. So one of the tasks I've been working on this week has been migrating the dashboard app from the pages directory to the app router directory. The dashboard app is written in Next.js, and I made the decision to change to app router since I felt it would simplify the process of getting data to my components at any level in the componentry. I'm going to take you through a general overview of the changes made, some things I learned while making the migration. When migrating from the pages directory to the app directory, one of the most visible changes is the different naming conventions for the files, as well as the number of files that go under a single route. This implementation makes it easier for you as a developer to get things right the first time without having to track complex logic through some application global state to monitor error states or loading states. It also enables better organization of your pages. As I worked on the migration, there are a couple of data fetching patterns that I noted in the app router. So generally, data fetching is an important aspect of many apps and also one of the hardest things to get right. And in the React ecosystem, there are like a dozen solutions to the problem, and these include tools like Redux Toolkit and React Query. These solutions, however, are not an option in the app directory, or unless you're going to use them with a client component, within a client component. But then again, they'll still be dependent on global context. Since the app directory treats all components as server first unless explicitly declared as client components. So implementing them starts feeling like an anti-pattern quickly, since you have direct access to the server within your components already. So if there's need for data, you can directly access it. Another problem in most apps is caching, and it's a hard problem to solve on your own. And the new API available within the app router makes it a lot easier to implement caching on both the client side and the server side, with all the complex layers abstracted away from you, so you can focus more on your business needs and not complex logic. An interesting feature I found was server actions. With all the other data fetching methods, data would only travel one way from the server to the client. But with the server actions, you can send data to the server and still receive responses. And these features, however, are experimental, and turning it on lets you know that the next team isn't yet ready to support it. I tested it out in one of my components, which is displaying a graph dependent on data from the server, and this data would change based on some selected value. Let me just open that up for you. So this component here implements a server action to fetch this data from the server, and when I change the time range, it calls the server action and then receives data back. So that was an interesting implementation. While doing the migration, I also ran into a couple of issues. One is I was using Formidable to handle all my file uploads, whereby the client would send up form data with a file, and while migrating the API handler responsible for handling the uploads, I noticed the request object was different and didn't have the same structure as a normal request object. So this was an interesting find. And in order to use form data, you'd have to call the form data function on the request object. So I had to rewrite the upload code to use a different implementation. But overall, I think the change was okay. The migration took about 4 days, mainly because there were a number of concepts I had to familiarize myself with, and a number of mistakes I had to make, and things I needed to try out. To look at all the file changes, feel free to review the pull request. I'm currently figuring out auth for the SDK, and will probably be posting a video on that soon. But until then,